So for today's vlog or this week's vlog, I'm going to be answering questions 1 and 3. So for the first question relating to the TED Talk by Richard Wilkinson, I think that when looking at life expectancies versus wealth for the whole world, there are countries like the United States and Norway that make twice as much as countries like Israel, Greece, and Portugal, yet there are no differences in the life expectancy. However, if you zoom in on those societies individually, you will begin to see a relationship between the life expectancy and wealth. And there is a clear difference that people that have more wealth have a higher life expectancy. Then you can also compare different parameters to income equality versus gross national economy. And so you will see a correlation when comparing these different parameters to income inequality. However, when you switch that to comparing to gross national economy, there is no correlation present. And this means that the average well-being of our societies is no longer dependent on national income and economic growth, and this is more suited towards the economies that are higher developed and such. This is more important, obviously, in poorer countries than it is for countries like the United States, Norway, or the UK. And for those countries where this is not as important, it is now the differences that are between us and the relationships that we have with each other that matter a lot more. And so you can look at homicides or just violence in general, along with imprisonment and social mobility. And it's clear that in the United States, it's a larger issue with these certain topics than in other countries. The United States has a higher rate of homicides or violence in general, has more prisoners than any other country, and it is less likely for you to be able to have social mobility within the United States. And so there are 3 categories that are affected by these bigger income gaps. And these include social relations, which include things like homicide, imprisonment, and trust. Human capital, which includes the child well-being, high school dropout rates, and social mobility. And then finally, health, which includes drug abuse, mental health instability, and life expectancy. And so I do believe that inequality is harming our society because the larger the gaps are within our economy or social statuses, it seems to negatively affect our society. And I think that if the United States were to be more equal, my life would be a little bit different, but not insanely different. And so both my parents do have well-established careers, but we are by no means upper class. We are a traditional middle class family, I believe. And so I don't think that changing the equality for the better would negatively affect their jobs or their income statuses. And I also think that potentially in the field of science, it would be a lot more friendlier than it is now to women in hard sciences, which would help to legitimize their place in the field, which in turn would also benefit my career as a whole. Being a organic chemist, I think that would do a lot and progress chemistry, biology, physics, math, all of those hard sciences and others farther into the future in terms of equality for women and men to work in the same workplace. And then moving on to question 3, which is dealing with the Who Rules America. So I think that the upper class is, again, characterized by old wealth, which means that they do have the funds to provide certain luxuries to their daily lifestyles. And so these can include sending their children off to private schools or boarding schools, which can then spiral into acceptances to Ivy League schools. And so there are a few ways that these can come to be. Firstly, the students could legitimately have fairly earned their spot into those schools. However, a large portion of this comes down to if their parents are legacies or they are legacies because their parents went to these Ivy League schools, or that the family ends up donating large sums of money to these colleges or universities and they are benefactors. That can sway the decisions of the admissions committee and allow these students to be admitted when there might be other qualified students. And so middle class Americans do typically send their kids to public schools, and by no means am I bashing public schools. I went to public school. But however, when you do this, there is obviously no true pull or leverage that can be used to help parents get their kids into school. And so that all falls on to the student to make sure that they make the grades, score well on the SATs or the ACTs, and potentially work to get some kind of scholarship, whether that is academic or athletic, so that they can get into the school that they want. And so I believe that one way that the upper class isolates themselves is by joining country clubs or other exclusive clubs that come with either a hefty price tag or typically require a large network to get them into that club. And so this is obviously unattainable for middle class families because they typically cannot afford the cost of these memberships. Another form of isolation can be through the isolation of their children from those who are from the middle or working class background. And this can be, again, through sending them to private schools or boarding schools, private tutoring, or private lessons for extracurricular activities, and many others. And so then my two questions for the week are, do you believe there is a difference in marriages when comparing the middle to the upper class? And if so, why? And how do you think that we can begin to reduce the economic inequality to better serve those in countries that are still trying to develop a strong economy?